Today we're going to talk about posting labor costs into Sage 100C manufacturing. Our agenda today is to take a look at Time Tracker setup. As you probably know, Time Tracker is the module for recording labor in Sage 100 manufacturing. So we're going to look at the setup for Time Tracker. We're also going to look at the setup for the work ticket class that relates to how labor is posted. And then we'll do some examples of Time Tracker entry. Okay, the first thing on our agenda is to take a look at Time Tracker setup. To do that, we're going to go into Sage 100 Manufacturing Options. Go to the Registration tab, and this is where we enter our registration numbers for all of the different modules in Sage 100 Manufacturing. But you might not know that you can click on this button for Time Tracker, and that will open up the settings for the Time Tracker module. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through all of these settings. I just wanted you to know that it exists. But these settings are very important. They will control what Time Tracker functions you can use, whether you're going to enter a start time and a stop time or just a lapse time and other configurations. So anytime that you have some issues about how your Time Tracker may be performing during data entry, you might want to visit these setup options. So let's go ahead and close that. The next thing we're going to look at is work ticket class setup and how it relates to labor posting. We're going to go into work ticket class maintenance and take a look at my work ticket class that I'm going to use or have been using, custom make to order systems. And if we go to the accounting tab, there's an option to cost labor at standard cost. So what this controls is how the cost of your labor gets into the work ticket. There are two possibilities. Either the labor cost is controlled by the activity code, or the labor cost is controlled by the individual employee. So when this is not checked, that means that the labor cost is going to be controlled by the employee. When it is checked, it's going to be controlled by the activity code. Your budget for your labor, when you create your work tickets and put the hours in, is always going to come from the activity code because it doesn't know what employee is going to be used yet, but your actual labor costs would be at the employee rate since I don't have this checked. So let's take a look at the activity code maintenance, and we'll see where those rates are maintained. So I'll just call up an activity code, and you can see what my standard labor rate is per hour for this particular activity code is $10.50. So this is where the labor rate is going to come from if that check box is enabled. However, if I look at employee maintenance and take a look at my employee settings, you will see that there's a labor rate associated with the employee as well. So we'll just call up Joe Worker, and you can see that he has a labor rate of $13.85. So again, that configuration on your work ticket class maintenance is very important to understand where the labor rate comes from. The last thing we're going to look at is our Time Tracker entry, and there are various options for Time Tracker entry. So now let's go into Time Tracker entry. So under Sage 100 Manufacturing, I'm going to the time section, and you can see there's many different options here for time entry. Let's just do a simple direct time entry. So we would select the employee. We would select the date. I'm going to go ahead and use my current accounting system date. We would select the work ticket. And from selecting the work ticket in the step, it would pull in the activity code, and we simply can put in the number of hours that are worked here. We can also put in a description of the work that was being performed. So I might type in installed software or whatever the work is. We can have an earnings code, department number, those kinds of things, but I'm just going to say OK, and we'll accept that. And then we'll accept the entry. Now, after entering our labor time, we can take a look at our time by employee. So here's our labor report by employee. This will show us the time that's entered for each of the employees. So here is Joe Worker, my 2 hours. But let's go ahead and do our daily labor register update. So we're going to go ahead and print that. Transaction date is going to be today for all work tickets. And we get the report that shows us the 2 hours being posted to this work ticket. And we'll go ahead and update that. And the daily transaction register is going to be a debit to our work in process and a credit to our applied labor account. And you can see I have other things going on in here. But here's my $13.85, or 2 hours is $27.70. So we can go ahead and update that. That posts to the work ticket. So that's direct time entry. We can also do a single employee time entry. Now, these entry screens are designed essentially for the employee to do their own time entry. So they can punch in, punch out, those kinds of things. The multi-employee entry screen is designed if two or more employees are using the same terminal. But the data entry, as you can see in these screens, are essentially the same. It's really just putting in the hours worked and the work that's been performed after selecting the employee and the work ticket. We'll go ahead and accept that. So lastly, you have your administrative time entry. So administrative time entry is designed for those situations where employees are filling out time cards. They're not doing their own time entry, and you're just looking at a stack of time cards and you're entering the time off of this. So I might select that and then the work ticket. Again, these time entry screens are pretty much all the same. Very easy to do the time entry. One other thing to be aware of, and I talked about this in a previous tip for posting the cost of goods to a work ticket, is while you're doing your time entry, there's a couple other things that you can do as well. One is you can issue the parts to the work ticket. So the person doing the entry of the administrative time entry can designate what parts were being used as this labor was being performed. The other thing you can do is you can change the status of a step. So if you are using step statuses to track where you are in the process of doing the manufacturing within the work ticket, you can use time entry for changing the status of each of those steps and essentially telling the system the step is complete or whatever you want to do. So you can do that, and then you can run reports on the statuses of each of those steps. As a refresher, we talked about time tracker setup. We went into work ticket class setup. We also looked at employee maintenance and activity code maintenance to see where those rates are established. And we did a little bit of time tracker entry, and we updated the daily labor register. Some information about NIMS & Associates. You can find us on YouTube. We're a group in LinkedIn. Our website is www.nimsassociates.com, and you can contact us at erp@nimsassociates.com. Thank you very much.